Hello, hello, everyone. It is Kenyon here. It is Basketball Rewind, and I am joined today by a very special guest. You are not my first or favorite guest because my first guest is always my favorite guest, sorry. But I am joined here by Marc of Music and Mental Health, which you could see in the background um, of his setup. So, what I will do is at the end of this discussion, I will link to his channel down below. He is a great, great person. And without further ado, I want to introduce him. So, first of all, Marc is a great person. He has a great YouTube channel. He is someone who has a bachelor's of business administration, but because of his own challenges that he has dealt with in his life, he decided to shift down the road of becoming a certified peer specialist within the mental health field. And he's been doing that for about 8 years. So I want to make sure, did I forget anything, Marc?
No, I appreciate that introduction. And I want to say I don't need to be the greatest. I don't need to be the favorite, I should say, but I always just aim to be the best interview that I could possibly do. So thank you for having me.
Thank you for coming. And again, this is hopefully the first of many that I will have you on for because, we've been talking shop about the Raptors or just basically basketball in general. So it's something that I want to continue to facilitate in the future. So today, just so everyone is aware, we're going to be talking a little bit about athletes and mental health and social media. So to kind of go into that, you being a content creator, you're a much larger content creator than I am, and you've been doing this for a little bit longer than I have been. So you obviously have dealt with the mob or stands of other people and
Yeah.
how that has affected you. And obviously, that's really challenging. Now, we've already had discussions about this offline, but if you want to kind of share your insight as to how you feel about that, and then from that, I guess the real question is, can you imagine what that's like for someone with a million followers or one of these athletes who is always in the prime time?
Yeah, I definitely have dealt with that, as you know. My page is a pretty small page, it's growing. It has about 2,000 followers, but you might be surprised on even a page with 2,000 followers, how many people daily just jump on the page to talk trash or make negative comments to me. So my relation to what the athletes are facing is that I started covering reality TV shows. And as we watch these shows, I take a pretty objective stance. Obviously, there's people on the shows that I like more than others, but regardless, I'm not really just standing for one person on the show. Like, this person could do no wrong. They go to the bathroom and rainbows come out. Excuse the analogy. But if I say something even like a little bit critical of a certain person on the show that the stands really love, they'll come at me and be like, they make more money than you, they're more popular than you, they're touring the world and you're sitting in your house talking about them. And I'm like,
Yeah.
that's all fun and good, but I'm just kind of watching for my entertainment and in some cases education, depending on what that particular person is providing. But I'll say when that first started happening to me, it did affect me mentally
Right.
because I was like, I'm not really attacking anybody. I'm not one of those toxic fans that is like, oh, I hate this person. They're so, I hope their sister dies. I'm not saying crazy stuff on my page. So why are people coming at me like this? So in relation to what you asked about being an athlete, I've seen highlights, regular highlights of somebody posted on NBA.com, House of Highlights, a
Yeah.
team page, and then I'll go through the comments and somebody will be like saying something really crazy about the athlete, really
Right.
crazy and personal. So I would assume that when they first become famous in that realm, it's probably a lot harder for them then. And then I think it's the reason why on social media we see so many pages that look like they're handled when it comes to an athlete, a celebrity that has millions of people on their page, because they probably can't intake that many different people saying that many things about them.
Or even a burner account.
A burner account like Kevin Durant.
So yeah, no, it's funny because I've seen, as you know, I'm a subscriber to your channel, and I've seen exactly what you're talking about. But I've also seen the House of Highlights or Bleacher Report or whatever. And it's funny because there's a spectrum of different responses. You'll go anything from the other day there was a fan incident where someone was talking terribly about Thad Young, his family, his wife on Twitter, and making threats, to something as simple as, okay, you're going to call yourself a basketball analyst or whatever, fair enough. But on a video where you're trying to analyze basketball, you're putting cuss words on the screen or whatever, and that's kind of like a little subtle jab and getting slightly personal. So there's the gambit of everything, and I'm not here to tell people how to feel about the sport, but it is interesting, kind of looking at a macro view of these things. It's interesting because, yeah, like you have these content creators. Again, I haven't faced any hate yet, and I think ultimately what you could do is just be your authentic self. It's one of the reasons why I love your channel, is because you are always authentically you, and please don't change that. But also, I think you've learned how to kind of separate that or compartmentalize that in a healthy manner, potentially because of your training with that. And so, with that being said, we'll just kind of shift over really quickly. I'm going to skip ahead and then come back to where I really wanted to talk about. But first, two of the really big guys who came out and talked about mental health, which has been rare in such a competitive space, has been Demar Derozan and Kevin Love. Obviously, if I'm not mistaken, they came out around the same time talking about mental health.
Kevin Love
And
after DeRozan.
Kevin Love after DeRozan. Okay, perfect. So I knew it was close to the same time, but yeah.
Yes.
Kevin Love also made comments after where he was talking about how there was a lot of passive aggressiveness made to him in certain tweets from previous teammates, maybe not fully understanding his space at the time. And so I'm just wondering what your thoughts are, first of all, and how do you talk about mental health in such a competitive space? In a sense, like YouTube is a competitive space, but also just in general as an athlete. Not saying that you're in the NBA, but being a specialist and as a peer.
Thanks for that question. I actually want to circle back to the DeRozan and the Kevin Love part. So the way how DeRozan ended up talking about mental health and mental illness was not in a way that he was trying to really reveal anything or tell anybody about his mental health. He made a tweet, I believe. It was on social media. I can't remember if it was a tweet or Instagram or wherever. Somewhere on social media, he said, sometimes depression gets the best of me. And then all of a sudden, all these media outlets picked it up. ESPN picked it up, and all these social media platforms and all these media people for the NBA is like, hey, DeMar DeRozan let everyone know he had depression. So he said he just made the tweet and like went to bed, and then woke up in the morning and all these people were trying to contact him about it. Like, can you talk to us about your depression? When did you start experiencing it? What are the symptoms? And he was like, I wasn't trying to be any kind of advocate. He said, I was experiencing this for years. And then I just happened to just make this little post about it. And suddenly I became the face of mental health, mental illness in the NBA. So I found that interesting. And then Kevin Love spoke about seeing that post and hearing DeMar now getting in all these interviews, talking about it, made him feel more comfortable to tell people, hey, I'm experiencing mental health issues as well. Now, in a sport, in a competitive sport, especially, honestly, a male competitive sport, being in those locker rooms, I'm not a pro athlete, but I did play sports in high
Yeah.
school, in college, basketball, football. I was in locker rooms. Nobody talked about those things. They made stupid jokes. They talked about females, which female is good looking or whatever, and they just acted like jocks basically. So I know that in that type of environment where there's potentially a lot of toxic masculinity, can you imagine sitting in one of those locker rooms and being like, hey guys, I'm not feeling myself because I'm experiencing depression today and I don't know if I'm going to play. They're probably going to be like, man up, what are you talking about? We all
Yeah.
experience stuff, we're all going through things, like just get on the court and play. So it's very hard. I equate sports, the more I get older, to a work environment. Not everybody is able to kind of realize that this is actually a job for them, but
Yeah,
that's
even some of the athletes too.
exactly. And so that's the way that I view it. They clock in, they have a job to do, they have responsibilities, rules, do the job, and go home. So it's tough in that kind of setting where you have other teammates depending on you, the franchise is paying you big money, the fans have all these expectations on you. This is all weight, added weight to be like, I'm not feeling myself because of mental health reasons. So, in terms of like disclosing that in a work environment, a question that I always have when it comes to sports: what are the provisions that the sport actually has? I'm very curious to know that, like for the NBA and other sports.
Yeah, so and I just want to make sure when you talk about provisions, there's another way of framing that as accommodations.
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, so this leads into my next thing is that you have guys like Royce White. I don't know if you remember Royce White.
Yes.
We talked about this before where, okay, so he struggled with, from what I remember, this is just off the top of my head. So sorry if I'm getting it wrong, Royce. If you happen to come across this, welcome. Like, comment, and subscribe. But Royce White talked about his mental health struggles right when he got into the NBA. And of course, one of the things was he had, I believe, generalized some sort of form of generalized anxiety disorder, where he didn't really feel comfortable traveling on planes. And so the question then becomes: is that in such a competitive environment, where sometimes people are looking for an edge, so if you put stuff out there, people are going to take that and trash talk you with that. I mean, we see it in a lot of other spaces where hey, why can't we as adults talk more about this? But at the same time, people are looking and taking those things and sometimes even using it against you, or weaponizing their own mental health struggles, in conversations and stuff like that. So, um, in a way, it sounds kind of weird to say, but how much, we don't know, but how much is also too much accommodation, right? Because if it's like, okay, well, yeah, if you provide me with a spare bus, so we can make it to Toronto, and it's like, like,
Yeah.
we're already paying you millions of dollars. We're already doing these type of things. In a sense, it's like we're investing in you as an employee of this organization.
Yeah.
And so at some level, it sounds weird to say, but there's especially it being a entertainment venue, there
Yeah.
is a expectation of a return on investment.
Yeah.
And so how much is too much? And I mean, I don't really have the answer, but it's challenging because I don't know what they offer. There's certain things that we won't talk about today, like the recent Spurs issue with a Canadian point guard that they let go. Name the name right now, but you know what I'm talking about. Where it's
Yep.
like also, are those supports sometimes being abused? And it's really challenging to kind of navigate this. So, with that being said, to shift it away from, do you want to respond about Royce White, or because my next thing was gonna within the supports talk about Ben Simmons.
Reasonable accommodations is very tricky when it comes to sports, just like you said, because sports does not just involve actually going out there and playing the sport. There's so much more that goes into it than that. So as an example, I made a video last year or a couple of years ago now about Naomi Osaka. She was in a tournament, I forget which one of the majors. Um, and she said she can't deal with the negativity of the press. So I think it was before the tournament started. She was like, I'm not going to be doing the press conferences because it's negatively impacting my mental health. So their response to that was to fine her for not showing up. And then they said the fines would keep increasing as she doesn't show up. And there will be further sanctions if she continues to do that. And then she ultimately ended up withdrawing from that tournament. So in general, I did see some people supporting her, but I saw a lot of the top people in the sport, her peers in the sport, being like, we all experience the media. We all don't want to talk to the media, but you got to just suck it up and do it. It's hard, but I feel like if it's just that you're feeling depression or the comments are affecting you in terms of it's hard to hear them, there's a weight behind hearing those comments. I do feel like based on it being an entertainment-based industry, which is what makes you your money in the first place, you do kind of have to suck it up. But if it's a case of you are becoming symptomatic, that's a totally different thing where it's impacting your overall health to a point where it would affect you being able to play. But in that case, if it was that bad, is playing even the thing that you should be thinking about at that point anyways?
Yeah, and I think that's a really good point that you just made, right? Is that is it symptomatic? Is it becoming a bigger thing, or is it just one isolated episode or incident, right? Because I kind of lean towards what you're saying for the first part, where essentially, if you are in an entertainment business, you get paid based on fans, and especially for a sport like the NBA. The NBA has kind of grown so much, not only because it's a cheap sport to play and grow, but also because it has kind of prided itself on being that 24-hour news cycle, that 24-hour fan interaction type of entertainment sport venue, in a sense. And that's what makes it different than some of the other sports leagues, some of the other major sports leagues, is that these guys, it's not like the NFL where it's the shield, right? It is the player. You look at the logo, even it's like literally a player versus a shield with a flag. So, it's something that's very interesting with, yes, how you talk about it and that sort of thing, but also it's like, yes, you are getting paid millions of dollars. There is a happy median. I do think that, from before I get to the Ben Simmons point, there is, I think, an understanding that fans do need to have, but at the same time, my favorite footballer, Marshawn Lynch, where he just showed up. I kind of
Here, so I
respect
don't
that.
get
He's like,
fined.
look, I'm here so I won't get fined. I don't really
Yeah.
feel like talking to y'all, but I'm here. You know.
Yeah. I would
So
say
yeah.
that you having a mastery of how to respond to these media people is an important skill that you have to learn, because you're
Yes.
going to encounter them every time you play, every tournament, every time you're involved in anything with your sport where you are on the clock. Like, and I know from their standpoint, they're like, oh, if I let one person sit out media because of mental health, how many other people are going to expect the same? And let's be honest, sports, professional sports, are a very high pressure environment. There's a lot of travel that goes on, minimal sleep, a lot of training. They have pressure to perform, just like you said, social media, fans coming at them all the time. Sometimes fans in the NBA screaming crazy things to them at the game at point
Yep.
blank range, like things that have nothing to do with basketball, talking about their wives and their kids and stuff. So, what I'm trying to say is being a professional athlete is not really healthy for your mental health.
No, it's not normal either. I think, it's,
Not
I don't think
normal.
I think we're social creatures, but we're never supposed,
So
it's a
it's a
different type of social, right? Like, it's like we're not supposed to be parasocial creatures.
Right. So it's an extremely fine line. If anyone watching this right now who has never gone to see a therapist, you go into a therapist's office and you say, sometimes my heart races, and sometimes, I feel stressed, or sometimes I feel like sad. They have a diagnosis in the DSM book for you, the diagnosis code book. Any athlete that comes in and talks about anything that they're facing in the NBA or whatever sport can get a diagnosis from a clinician. And then if the sport has said, okay, if you feel depressed and you get like a doctor's note and the doctor says you can't do media, then the rest of them are going to be like, we don't like doing media. So let me get my note too. Let me get my diagnosis too. So that's why I say it's very tricky for something like professional sports when it comes to reasonable accommodations. And I think the only way to really get something like that done in a way that is acceptable for everyone is for all the players. Like, how the NBA has the Players Association? The players would have to come together and be like, this is what we think is reasonable. And they would have to be pretty uniform about it. And they would have to bring it to the owners and management and everything like that and come to some sort of happy medium. But I think that that's something, it's kind of hard to see that happening, really.
Well, you know what? The CBA negotiations are sorry. The CBA negotiations are actually coming up pretty soon and have been ongoing. In fact, they just extended the deadline recently. I think a month ago they extended the deadline. I can't remember till when. So some of these things are going to be talked about, and that does lead into the Ben Simmons conversation because, of course, you talked about it from a podium standpoint. But if you go to a doctor and you say, I can't play or whatever because my back, my neck, my back, my neck, right? And maybe you do have an actual problem where you're getting back surgery on it, or maybe it's a combination of that, and it could be, say, psychosomatic symptoms. Well, how do you deal with that? Because on one hand, there are laws and regulations that are meant to protect each individual person, and you don't want to make an assumption. At the same time, because of the things that were involved in the Ben Simmons situation, it could be argued that it was potentially not the best way to handle that sort of circumstance on the whole, particularly from a PR standpoint.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm trying to frame this conversation in an appropriate manner as well. So, not sure what your thoughts are on the Ben Simmons situation, but before you say anything, I'll say this as well. When Ben Simmons got traded, I was of the mindset that in terms of from a mental standpoint, because I do think that that was one of the things that he cited as well.
Mm-hmm.
Um, he needs to be in an environment that is essentially I don't want to go as far as saying nurturing, but as supportive as possible. And he has the resources, sure, but it's also creating that environment around you that is supportive. So it's I'm sure that there are some franchises that are better than that than others, but I would be hard pressed to say that him going to Brooklyn, uh, with all that went on, was probably the best environment for him. And sometimes, from what I understand, the limited knowledge that I understand, it seems like you need sometimes years to almost rebuild yourself. And so I'll leave it at that and let you take it away from there.
Yeah, so this is something that I've been thinking about for a long time, this specific Ben Simmons situation. And when he first came around and said, I have mental health issues and Philly is kind of not treating me right and ignoring my issue, I wanted to side with him. And I think I even did side with him in the early days. Like, Ben Simmons is 100% right. They're 100% wrong. He should be able to speak to a therapist. But as everything unfolded, I realized that there was tension with Ben Simmons and his teammates, particularly with Embiid. Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid, um, Joel Embiid basically questioned his commitment to the team, and he questioned his work ethic publicly. As some people who are watching this might know, the rift after the playoffs when he didn't shoot that layup and he passed the ball out, and then Doc Rivers and Embiid didn't defend him in the media. He felt a way about that. I don't know if you've seen it, but he actually even did an interview on All the Smoke with Matt Barnes and Steven Jackson. So he was talking about it there. And I was seeing that a lot of the issues were personal issues that he was having with players, coaches, management, and the organization. So then it becomes hard to say, you didn't say at first it's mental health. So it's like in the midst of this storm, then you're like, you know what? I have mental health issues. So earlier you talked about people weaponizing their own mental health. I hate when I see that, because I have real mental health struggles that affect me, and I rarely use them as an excuse. So, if you hear me say that, I can't do this because of my mental health and experiencing symptoms, it's because it's really bad and I have to take a break or whatever. But in the case of, let's just say I'm in the midst of some dispute with my job.
Yeah.
And then when everything gets to its apex, I'm like, you know what? I have mental health issues. I'm going on disability. Then they're going to be looking at me like, but why didn't you say this at any point leading up to this? So I'm not denying that Ben Simmons has some kind of mental health disorder, something wrong with him in that regard. It's just the timing of when he used it and how makes it look like it was an additional layer that he could add to his case to make sure that he A, gets his money, and B, gets out of Philadelphia. That's my opinion on that.
What was interesting about that, from what I remember, and I don't know, I'm not in his agent's mind, but if Philly was such a bad environment, why did he go back to Philly conveniently, randomly in the middle of the season? And to me, it was like, because you know how Philly fans are, right? Like you knew that they were going to say something to him, right? So it's
if y'all don't know, I went to a
see?
Philly game in a Siakam jersey, and I was happy to get out of the building. Let's just say that.
Yeah, so it's I haven't done that, but I've been to a Seattle Seahawks game, and someone else was wearing a different jersey, and that, like, these two dudes started fighting for no reason. Just the dude was wearing the wrong jersey. So there are some places where you got to be careful. But and to be honest, this actually, to kind of bring it full circle, fans and how they interact with players and how they treat players, right? Because we can go on and on about Ben Simmons and all that, and I echo all of your sentiments. I mean, we've talked about it before, but I think that fans sometimes do need to do better in terms of how they interact with players, and sometimes it's just as simple as being patient. But also, I will say that while the media does need to do a better, the media can basically do a better job of covering these things. So and sometimes not side with the player, but kind of beady, a little bit more gentler.
A little bit.
Yeah. So a good example, and again, I'm not here to name names, but the Toronto media this year has been very harsh towards Scotty Barnes, to name a player as an example. I'm sure that there are other players in other markets where they've been harsh against, and sometimes it is some critiques of players is always going to be fair at a certain level, but also at a different level, sometimes it gets too much and it becomes a pile on. And so I guess how can fans avoid interacting, like they want to interact with players, but avoid piling on?
Yeah, and if you remember, I think a season or two ago, they were doing the same thing to Siakam. And actually,
Covered it in my video.
It was, oh, you did? I got to check that
Yeah.
out. It was very ugly, as a matter of fact, because I remember when he was getting off of his injury and he came back and he was kind of rusty. and he wasn't putting up the numbers that we were used to seeing. And then I remember they made like a GoFundMe, send him back to Africa. It was like, I was like, wow, what do you people, are you really a fan?
Yeah.
Because how can you love somebody one day and then be saying these crazy things about them the next?
And I also want them to rock with you.
Exactly. Exactly. And you're like, why is this person not interacting with me or whatever? Like, why are they not responding to fan comments? It's because of things like that. They're protecting their energy. And you and I talked about this too. I'm sure that a lot of their family and friends field a lot of that stuff for them.
I've
Like,
seen it. I've seen it.
yeah, you told
I've
me about
actually seen it. And sometimes they field it in the wrong way because they're not media trained, or they don't have that they come from a background where, it goes from 0 to 100.
it.
And that may not be a good thing, but that is a very human thing. And I think it's almost like when we're dealing with players, again, there's a whole spectrum of how to critique and or you know dislike a player. But at the same time, it's sometimes we forget that even if they are flawed, they are oftentimes, as far as I know, human. Except for maybe
I
Kawhi.
know it sounds like an obvious thing to say, but people look at them as these robots that are
Yep.
just here for our entertainment. And then I see people saying, oh, well, he gets paid millions of dollars to do this. So who cares if he's sad, or who cares if he has a sprained ankle, or who cares if he had surgery and he's having a hard time getting back? He needs to make that shot. He needs to
Yep.
have made that game winner or whatever, or he needed to appear outside with the rest of his teammates when they came out to the bus instead of just walking past everyone and going in the bus. It's like, I equate it to me being at work. No, I don't have fans at work.
Yeah.
But there are days when I wake up and I'm like, I don't want to go in. I don't want to interact with anybody. I would rather just stay here in bed, but I have to put myself on because I'm getting paid to do this and this is a job. And the same thing happens for them. Even though their job, they're putting on shorts and a jersey, there's days where people pass away in their family. There's days where they just feel really stressed because of things that are going on with them personally or things that happen out in the world. They've had to play basketball games in their cities minutes after tragedies happen in their city,
Yep.
where it's like they're watching the news of some shooting or like something crazy going on.
Isaiah
And then,
Thomas.
right, his sister. Yes, yes, exactly. Where
And he still laced it up, went, did his thing.
and you better believe if he was bad in that game, there would
Yeah.
be some fans that are just like, what are you doing? You shouldn't have played, or, you need to just suck it up because you're paid millions of dollars.
Yep.
They still put on their pants one leg at a time.
Yep.
They still get sick. They still have family members, kids, responsibilities. The only difference is their pay grade is higher and they're doing a professional sport for a living.
Yep. Yeah, I mean it's tough, and I mean again, we could have this whole. I mean, we could talk about this for a very long time. We have actually talked about this for a very long time, but I know that you have to go relatively soon, so I won't take too much more of your time up. But yeah, I think it's one of those things where I think everyone involved needs to be more patient. I do agree that sometimes fan interactions are not the best. I also think that there are times when players need to be better themselves, whether it be with their teammates, being more understanding with themselves. Also, I think that this is something where to be the best, you almost have to build up yourself not only physically but also mentally as well, to weather whatever storm comes, because seasons or whatever, there's always going to be these ups and downs, highs and lows. And also with content creators and with people interacting with content creators, I think everyone would be best served to just be a little bit more patient with everyone, and get back to a better version of discourse. This is, by the way, nothing has actually sparked this. I've just wanted to talk about this just for the audience for a long time because I've just seen these things and it's okay,
I did want to say
yeah.
I did
Hmm.
want to
Of
say one more thing. There's
course.
the other side of the coin where
Yeah.
a lot of these former NBA players in particular are saying that the players of today's era are too soft mentally.
Yeah.
Now, it might be a harsh criticism, but I think that there's also some truth to that. Because as we have examined, for instance, fans yelling things to players, there are certain things that I've heard said to like Russell Westbrook, a few players that
Yeah.
notable incidents happened with that I'm like, clearly that fan needed to be out of the game. There's other instances where a fan is just like, you suck. You're the worst basketball player, whatever. They're just yelling and cursing like fans typically do at games. And then the player is just like, you know what? Nowadays, I have the power to be like, you're out of here. So
Yeah.
I'll just go over to the ref and be like, yo, homeboy was saying something inappropriate to me. Get him out. They don't ask
Yeah.
questions. Security comes over to them, escorts them out of the game. And some of those tickets, you know how much it costs to get tickets to be that close, anyways, for the player to be able to hear you.
Yeah.
Like if it's LeBron James, you know that if you're sitting in the front row, you're probably paying 5 figures to sit in that seat on courtside. So I think it is like a balancing act between a fan that goes overboard and calls them out of their name and speaks about their family or kids or whatever, versus a fan that's just like cursing about them. You effing
Yes.
suck, that kind of thing. I do think that you have to be able to allow some of that stuff to go. And it makes me admire the people of the era I grew up watching, like an MJ, where the fan would say something to him and he's saying something back to the fan.
Yeah.
I think I think that some of those players, you were talking about compartmentalizing things.
Yeah.
I think that they're like, when I go into this environment, it's different than me walking down the street. Because a lot of players say such and such wouldn't say this if they were walking down the street and they saw me on the street. This is true, but they're not seeing you on the street. They're
Yeah.
paying thousands of dollars to go into the front row. This might have been like 2 weeks or 3 weeks of their work salary. And it's like going to a wrestling match for two
Yeah.
hours. I want to yell and scream and curse at you. And then I'm going to go home and face my regular life that I'm already facing. So to an extent, you also have to let fans be fans.
Yeah, I think, and it's tough. I don't know where the line is, and I gave you like a spectrum, and I'm not here to say, again, just for anyone watching, I'm not here to say what is or shouldn't be out of bounds. Obviously, like things that are racist or whatever, keep that
Yeah.
stuff at home or just don't do it at all. Um, you know, but I agree with you. I'm not here to say like these guys are soft or whatever, and it's tough. It's a delicate dance because you want people to be more open and talk about mental health and normalize some of these things, or just be more open as people. It actually helps to humanize the athlete,
Yeah.
but at the same time, you and I have just talked about how, yeah, sometimes it's like not even that big of a deal, and sometimes I think it's within bounds. There's a difference between someone chucking batteries at you versus,
Yeah.
that sort of thing. And so, again, I don't know where to draw the line. I don't think anyone really knows.
Yeah.
I'm not here to turn this into a weird free speech type thing, but
Yeah.
I'll let someone else with their podcast do that. But it's interesting, and I do think that while yes, there is an old guard that is sometimes a little bit too stubborn.
Yeah.
There is also, they do have a point. I think it was Charles Barkley, and he said some of these dudes out here, you're getting paid way more millions of dollars than I ever made, even with inflation, and you look like you're not even enjoying this game,
Yeah.
right? Like it's like you're literally getting paid to play a game. At least look like you enjoy it at some level. And that's I mean, I won't even talk about the from other industries, but you see it where people get into these things for the money or whatever,
Yeah.
And I'm not here to tell people how to feed their families or whatever, but it's almost sad where it's like this person is doing something that they don't even love and they just feel compelled to do. And I wonder of this new generation of basketball players that are pros, how much of that also contributes. So we'll leave that for another time. But yeah.
Yeah, I was just gonna say really quick. Imagine doing something that demanding, but not working off of passion. Because it's not like there's some jobs where you could just punch the clock, you're just doing whatever, you're kind of coasting through. This is not that kind of job.
No.
So if you are there, but you're not really passionate about it and you're just kind of doing it for the money that you're making and or the fame or whatever, it's going to affect your teammates. It's going to affect your own mental health. It's going to be hard to go out there in an arena where there's 15 to 20,000 people that pay to see y'all perform. And then when you go out there and you're just punching the clock and not performing to what they know you can do or have seen you do before, then you're going to be subjected to the fans that are like, you got no heart. You don't care about the game. So even though you're getting your money, you now live this life where you're under this large microscope where all these people are criticizing you, some of it justly. So it's very hard. I know a lot of these answers are not really answers,
Yeah.
but it's just a lot of things to think about.
Well, it's there's an old adage where it's like it's you have a vessel or a cup of water and you're filling up the cup of water and then throughout the day the cup kind of goes down. Well, the people that are doing it where they're just punching in the clock and they're not passionate about it, um, those are the people where they're not coming into the workplace with a full cup even.
And you know what they say? They're like, these are the ones that often say, I thought of this as you were saying that. Those are the players that are often like, oh, well, maybe I didn't make that shot, or maybe my stats are going through a slump, but you're a janitor. And
Yeah.
you're always going to have to be this janitor when I'm going to go back to my mansion and, my nice cars and go on my vacations and whatever. And it's
Yeah.
like, that's true. But that is kind of, it goes without saying that the work that you do obviously gives you this nice life and this nice mansion and whatever. But to feel the need to say that to the janitor, to me, already shows that they made you feel a certain way with
Yeah.
what they
Or and the people that know will know who I'm quoting, but I'm a basketball elitist, or I only talk hoops with people at this level, because some of y'all don't understand. It's just like I feel like if you and it's a player, by the way, so just so people know,
yeah, I've
uh,
heard that before.
yeah. So like I feel like in the moment maybe the person didn't realize it, but it's like first of all that's actually not true. It's a logical fallacy, and we're not going to turn this into a philosophy 101 thing, but it's a logical fallacy, and that's not actually true because you can definitely analyze the game and get a lot of incentives without having to be
Yeah,
playing in the NBA at the
yeah,
highest level. Heck, there's some coaches that have never been in the NBA, and yet they're phenomenal coaches.
yeah.
So the other thing too, though, is again, like it goes back to like maybe that's how they guard themselves, but there is a level of like that's why I said like patience all around, whether it's fans, but also players towards fans and media, is sometimes needed. Like some of these people are just doing their job, whether it's media, but also some of the players are just literally doing their job.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, but with that, it's been great having you. And like I said, I'm going to link your channel down below. Not going to forget this time. And hopefully we have you on in the future, unless you're sick of me already. So, so yeah, it's been great, and I will talk to you later.